Welcome to another night of Reddit stories to fall asleep to. Whether you're winding down after a long day or just looking for a peaceful escape, we've got a selection of stories that will ease your mind and carry you into the night. We'll dive into the world of heartfelt confessions, unexpected twists and touching moments from real people, just like you, who've shared their experiences on Reddit. These stories are meant to relax, entertain and soothe you into a calm state, perfect for drifting off into dreamland. So, settle in, get cozy, and let the stories take you on a gentle journey. Take a deep breath. Let go of the stress from today. It's time to relax. Let's get started. Am I the a-hole for finding out my mother was never really my mother, and exposing her in front of the entire family, knowing it would destroy everything? I've never really felt like I belonged. Not in a tragic movie protagonist way, just in the quiet, humming kind of disconnect that clings to you in certain rooms. My family always said I was sensitive, too much in my head. I remember being 5 years old, standing in front of the mirror, and wondering why my eyes didn't match my mother's. Hers were dark, warm, brown. Mine were icy blue. I remember asking her if I was adopted. She laughed. Not the amused kind, but the brittle, scolding kind that says, "Don't be ridiculous." I never asked again. But the questions never stopped. I was a quiet kid, observant, good at school, good at pretending I didn't hear the way my mother spoke to me, differently than she did to my siblings. I had 2 brothers, both older, both very obviously hers. They shared her dimples, her olive skin, her easy laugh. I was always the delicate one, the moody one, the one with artistic temperament, as she liked to call it. My father was quieter, loving in a distant way. He'd pat my head like a pet, call me little bird, then go back to his newspaper. I didn't hate my childhood, but I never felt safe in it either. It was like living in a house where the furniture was beautiful but bolted down, nothing moved, nothing changed, and no one talked about the draft under the door. The unease really started to bloom in my teens. I began to notice how closely my mother monitored my movements. She insisted on being my emergency contact for everything. She intercepted my mail. I thought it was just helicopter parenting, and maybe it was, but there was an edge to it, a frantic urgency to control the narrative. I once got a D on a math test, and she cried for an hour, not because she was disappointed in me, but because she was terrified someone would see the grade. I didn't understand then what she was trying to protect. When I turned 18, I applied to out-of-state colleges. She said no. Actually said no like it was her decision. She cried again, the hysterical kind, the kind you feel in your bones. She said she couldn't bear to be that far from me. I backed down. I stayed close. I told myself it was love. I didn't really think about it again until I turned 30. My husband Ryan and I had been trying for a baby. I'd always been ambivalent about kids, but Ryan was sure. He came from a big, noisy family, one of those messy, affectionate ones that cook too much food and argue over nothing. I wanted that warmth. So we tried, and then we got tested. The results came back normal for him, but mine were a red flag. The doctor said something didn't add up, that my blood work had anomalies, that my medical records seemed inconsistent. I went home that night and pulled out every document I had: birth certificate, immunization records, pediatric notes. And that's when I saw it. The name of the hospital where I was supposedly born. It had closed 2 years before my birth date. I stared at that for a long time. Then I did something I can't explain even now. I spit into a mail-in DNA test. The results came back 4 weeks later. I wasn't genetically related to anyone in my immediate family. Not my mother, not my father, not my brothers. No shared DNA. None. It was like being dropped through a trapdoor. I didn't tell anyone at first. I just walked through the days like I was carrying a glass of water I couldn't spill. I searched adoption records. Nothing. I searched missing child reports. Nothing matched. Then I did something I didn't even know was possible. I paid for a more advanced genealogical search through an investigator who specialized in discrepant parentage discovery. What came back destroyed the life I thought I had. My real mother was alive. She had been 17 when she gave birth to me, and she had reported me missing at 8 months old. taken from a bus station while she was traveling with her infant daughter. Police suspected a stranger abduction, but no arrests were made. The case went cold, and then somehow I ended up with the woman I'd called Mom for 30 years. I didn't know what to do. The investigator advised caution. He said my real mother, her name was Corinne, had another daughter, a husband, a life. She had never stopped looking, but she didn't know where I was, only that I'd disappeared. He offered to reach out gently, professionally. I said yes. Corinne responded within a day. She said she had always believed I was alive, that she felt it in her bones, that she never gave up, that she couldn't believe I had found her. We agreed to meet. I drove 6 hours to a town I'd never heard of. I sat in a diner and watched the door open, and when she walked in, I knew. She had my eyes, my hands, my posture. We sat and stared for a long time. She cried. I shook. She showed me a photo album, pages of a baby with my face, a nursery that looked soft and safe, a hospital ID bracelet with my real name, Lena Marie. I'd never heard that name before. We talked for hours. I went home and fell apart. And then, finally, I confronted my mother. The woman who had raised me. I didn't even have to say it. She saw it in my eyes. She sat down slowly, like someone preparing for a storm, and she said, "You found her." I asked her why. She said she hadn't meant to, that she was infertile, grieving, desperate, that she saw me alone at the station, unattended for a moment, and something inside her snapped, that it was fate. She said I should be grateful. I slapped her. Then I told my brothers. They didn't believe me. Not at first. I showed them the paperwork, the DNA results, the photos. One of them accused me of faking it. The other cried and asked me what he was supposed to do with this information. Then came the worst part. I told my extended family. At a reunion, in front of everyone. I didn't plan to, it just came out. I said, "The woman you all call my mother kidnapped me when I was a baby. I found my real family. They've been looking for me for 3 decades. The room went silent. Then, my mother screamed. Then everyone screamed. She left, fled, disappeared. Half the family blocked me. The other half whispered behind my back. No one said they'd suspected anything, even though I didn't look like them, even though the stories never made sense, even though I was always treated like a guest in my own home. And now I have 2 families, one that raised me on lies, one that lost me to them. I love Corinne. I visit often. We're rebuilding something impossible. She has a daughter, my half-sister, who is wary but kind. We talk in cautious, excited bursts. Sometimes it feels like falling in love. Other times it's unbearable. I live alone now. My marriage ended in the chaos. Too much grief, too much identity collapse. But I sleep better. And yet, sometimes I still wonder, am I the a-hole for blowing up the lie instead of preserving the illusion? For exposing a kidnapper who also raised me with real, if warped, love? For telling the truth so loudly it shattered people who didn't even know they were in a lie? I don't know. But I do know this. I would rather live with a painful truth than sleep in a beautiful lie. Am I the a-hole for destroying my own family to save a stranger from them, only to learn she wasn't a stranger at all? I was born into a family that wore perfection like a designer suit. On the outside, we were picturesque. My mother was elegant, the kind who wore heels to breakfast and never let her lipstick smudge. My father was the quintessential provider. Sharp jaw, sharper tongue, successful in that cold, calculated way that made people mistake fear for respect. My older brother, Nathan, was the golden boy. Straight A student, athlete, debate champion, and everyone's favorite liar. I was the afterthought, the quiet girl with the anxious eyes and a talent for disappearing into walls. My role in the family was clear. Be good, be quiet, be invisible unless called upon. I learned early on that silence was currency in our home. Secrets were preserved like heirlooms, handed down through loaded glances and dinner table tension. You could scream in my house and no one would flinch, but if you cried in public you were punished for the shame. I never questioned it. Not when I was 6 and my mother found bruises on my thighs and told me not to make trouble. Not when I was 11 and overheard my father threatening Nathan with military school. then hugging him 5 minutes later. Not when I was 16 and my best friend Lily told me she saw my brother doing something awful to a girl behind the gym, and I told her she must have misinterpreted it. I was groomed to defend the fortress of family at all costs, and I did. So until the cost became someone else's life. I was 28 when I met her. Her name was Isla. She was small, thin, pale, almost sickly. I was working as a legal clerk for a firm in the city. She came in for a consultation, no appointment, just walked in one Tuesday morning, shaking, clutching a manila folder like it was a life raft. My boss was busy, so I asked if I could sit with her until someone was free. She said yes, then stared at me like I'd hit her. "You look familiar," she whispered. I shrugged it off. People said that to me all the time. I had one of those faces. But as she spoke, something inside me began to unravel. She was being harassed. She said it started as small things, notes on her car, hang-up calls, someone following her home but disappearing before she could see them. Then it escalated. A brick through her window, her dog poisoned, her phone hacked, her locks changed. While she slept, she reported it 3 times. The police filed a report. Nothing happened. They said she had no evidence. She said she knew who was doing it, but he was untouchable. She wouldn't say his name. When I asked, she flinched, and then she opened the manila folder. Inside were photos, dozens, some of her in the shower, taken from above, some of her asleep, mouth open, vulnerable, one of her sitting on a toilet taken from behind. My stomach turned, but what made me freeze was a small receipt tucked in between the pages, from a gas station 3 towns over. Nathan's name was on it, his credit card, a date, a time. The same night she said she was followed for 3 hours. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed. I told her it must be a mistake. She looked at me, confused. I told her I had a brother named Nathan, but it couldn't be the same person. She went still. "Your last name is Graves," she said. I nodded. She looked like she was going to throw up. She stood, gathered the folder, apologized, said she'd made a mistake. Then she ran. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself if it was possible, if Nathan could be that man. Then I remembered Lily. I remembered how she'd moved away and never spoke to me again. I remembered how the girl behind the gym, the one he was just talking to, transferred schools a week later, and no one ever mentioned her name again. I started pulling threads, slowly, quietly. I looked through his old social media accounts. I found burner emails, hidden caches of photos on accounts, with usernames like Lightchaser47 and Red King Nathan. I hacked into his old phone with a trick I learned from a tech client. I found videos, one of Isla, one of another girl, one of a child. My hands shook. I threw up twice. Then I backed it all up, burned it to a USB, and hid it inside the vent. In my bathroom, I didn't go to the police. I went to Isla. It took me 3 weeks to find her again. She'd moved. New job, new hair, new name. I found her through a friend of a friend who ran a women's shelter. I asked to see her. She refused. I wrote a letter, told her I believed her, gave her the USB, gave her everything. She cried. She screamed. She hugged me. She told me she wasn't the only one. There were others. So we made a plan. She went public first, on a blog. No names, just her story. It went viral. Then came the others, one by one. A dozen stories, a dozen women, all painting the same portrait. A charming, intelligent predator who wore family like a mask. My parents denied everything, said it was lies, said the women were after money, fame, revenge. They said I was mentally ill. They cut me off, called me a traitor, a Judas, but it worked. Nathan was arrested, indicted on multiple counts of stalking, sexual assault, digital, harassment, and more. The trial was chaos, cameras, protesters. My mother testified for him. My father tried to have me discredited as a witness. My own flesh and blood tried to bury me in court. But I didn't flinch. And then Isla took the stand. She was calm, brave, devastating. The jury cried. Nathan cried. And then the prosecution dropped the bomb. DNA. They'd tested samples from the videos. from old evidence kits never processed. He was linked to 4 victims, 4 at least. He got 35 years. My family disowned me. My mother wrote me a letter saying she had no daughter. My father moved to another country. I haven't seen them in years. But here's where the twist comes. A year after the trial, Isla called me, said she had something to tell me. I met her in a park. She looked radiant, healthier, stronger, free. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo, black and white, faded. A hospital crib, a bracelet with my mother's name on it. And beside it, another crib, another bracelet, another name. Isla Graves. She was my twin. Switched at birth? No. Stolen. My mother had twins, but she only took one home. Isla was given up, quietly, illegally. A secret adoption no one knew about. She found out during therapy, when she requested her birth records. Our DNA confirmed it. We were sisters. Sisters. She said she always felt like something was missing, like her life had been a puzzle with the edges ripped out. I felt the same, and suddenly it all made sense. Why she felt familiar. Why I couldn't abandon her. Why I destroyed my family for her, because she was my family, the only one that mattered. So now I live with her. We share a small apartment by the sea. We take turns making breakfast. We talk about the past in pieces, not all at once, and every night before bed she says thank you. And I ask myself quietly, am I the a-hole for what I did? For choosing a stranger over my parents? For setting fire to my bloodline? For tearing down the walls of the only home I ever knew, just to let the truth crawl out of the ashes? But every morning, when I wake up and see her smile, I know I did the right thing, even if it cost me everything. Am I the a-hole for ruining my best friend's wedding after I found out her fiancé was actually my stalker? And no one believed me. I never imagined I'd become the villain in someone else's fairy tale, least of all hers. Chloe wasn't just my best friend, she was family. We met in middle school and never left each other's side. We had all the clichés, pinky promises, matching bracelets, embarrassing photo albums, sleepovers where we planned our futures with boys we'd later forget. She was the golden girl, blonde, bright, radiating joy. I was the quieter one, the listener, the loyal sidekick. I didn't mind. Chloe made everything feel like a story worth living, and I was content to be her co-author. So when she called me and said she'd met someone, the one, she claimed, I was genuinely thrilled for her. We were nearing 30, and dating had become more disillusioning than romantic. So when she said she'd met someone through a friend at work, someone who made her laugh until she cried, someone respectful and steady, I cheered her on. Until I met him. Thomas. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly tamed hair, the kind of suit that fits too well to be off the rack. He had the energy of a politician, confident, charming, but in a rehearsed way. I smiled through dinner the first night. We met, but something about him hit the wrong note, like a piano just slightly out of tune. I figured it was my own baggage. 6 months before that dinner, I had ended the most terrifying relationship of my life. We'd only been together for 3 months, but it felt like I'd barely survived a war. His name was Eli. We met online. It started out like a dream. He was attentive, funny, intense in a way that made me feel special, like I was the center of gravity. But that intensity soured fast. He needed to know where I was at all times. He got jealous of my dog. He showed up outside my yoga class after I mentioned it once, despite me never telling him where it was. The breaking point was when I found my bedroom window cracked open and a photo of me sleeping left on my pillow. I moved, got the cops involved, filed a restraining order, but he vanished. No real name, fake photos, burner number. He was a ghost. And then came Thomas. At first I thought I was losing it. PTSD, maybe. Trauma making me see shadows in the shape of old fears. But then he slipped. Subtle things. He knew my dog's name. Even though I never mentioned her around him, and she died before Chloe met him. He said he liked the way I wore my hair, better in waves, something Eli used to nag me about constantly. Once, when Chloe left the room, Thomas looked at me and said, You still sleep with the light on?" I froze. He smiled like it was an inside joke. I laughed awkwardly, but my heart was in my throat. That night I went home and tore apart every old file I had on Eli. Messages, voice notes. I found an old voicemail, one where he was whispering. My name, the cadence, the rhythm, the quiet menace. It was Thomas. I wasn't crazy. I knew it. But how do you tell your best friend that the man she's about to marry is your stalker, your abuser, a liar who reinvented himself? I tried. Carefully. I asked how well she knew him. She got defensive. She said I was acting jealous. I tried. Again, more directly. I told her about Eli. I told her I thought it was the same man. She laughed, actually laughed, and said I needed therapy. Eli didn't have a LinkedIn and a mortgage, she said. Thomas is real, stable. He's everything you always wanted, so I get why you're spiraling, but you need to stop. I begged her to listen. She stopped answering my calls. Then her maid of honor duties were quietly reassigned. I wasn't even told us, just left out of the group chat. I started digging. Thomas's LinkedIn had only appeared 2 years ago. His university couldn't verify his attendance. I ran a reverse image search on his supposed brother's Facebook profile and found that the photos were AI-generated stock images. Everything was fabricated. He was playing the long game, creating an entirely new identity. I went to the police. They were sympathetic, but said it wasn't enough. No direct threat, no evidence he was currently stalking me. I felt like I was screaming underwater, so I did the only thing I could think of. I went to her wedding. I wasn't invited. I wore a black dress and sunglasses. I stood in the back, like a ghost. She looked radiant, he looked smug. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, I stepped forward. There was a murmur. Chloe's eyes widened. I said, "That man is not who he says he is." Gasps, whispers. I said, "His real name is Elijah K. He used to stalk me. He broke into my home. I filed a restraining order. He disappeared. He's using a fake identity." He laughed, actually laughed. Then he said, "She's been obsessed with me for years. I tried to help her. She spiraled. She's dangerous." Chloe was frozen. Her father dragged me out. I didn't fight it. The wedding continued. They got married, but I wasn't done. I hired a private investigator. I gave him everything. In 2 weeks, he found proof that Thomas had used 3 identities in the past 10 years, none of them traceable to a real birth certificate. He'd been sued twice under aliases, one for harassment, one for impersonation. I compiled it all in a file, sent it anonymously to Chloe, no reply. A week later, I got a knock at my door. It was her, disheveled, crying. She said he'd locked her out of her email, her finances, her social accounts, said he screamed at her when she asked about his past, said he threw a glass at the wall. I took her in. We filed an emergency protection order. She went into hiding with me, and while she stayed, I watched her unravel, not just from him, but from the shame of not believing me. "I should have listened," she said again and again. The fallout was brutal. Thomas disappeared. Again, the wedding was annulled. Her parents refused to speak to me. Half our old friends think I made it all up. But I saved her, I know I did, and yet every time I look in the mirror, I still ask myself, am I the a-hole for what I did, for crashing a wedding with a horror story, for making everyone see her fairy tale collapse into ashes, even if I was right? Am I the a-hole for destroying my husband's life after I found out who he really was and what he did to my sister? The night I found that final video, the one where Kayla looked like a ghost of herself, barely speaking, repeating whatever Brandon told her to say, something inside me shattered in a way that couldn't be undone. My hands were cold. My skin felt like paper. I had this intense out-of-body clarity, the kind that comes not from rage but from grief so total it crystallizes into purpose. I looked at my husband, sleeping peacefully in our bedroom like a man without a care in the world, and realized that I could never look at him the same way again. I wasn't even sure I could look at myself, but I had a mission now and I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. Kayla didn't just fall through the cracks. She was pushed, groomed, gaslit, broken. I let myself believe the narrative, because I didn't want to imagine someone I loved, someone I chose, could be responsible. But he was. There was no doubt anymore. The timeline, the recordings, the photos, the patterns, it all pointed to one simple, horrifying truth. Husband had seduced, manipulated, blackmailed, and psychologically tormented my sister, until she took her own life. And he had done it while looking me in the eyes, putting a ring on my finger, holding my hand at her funeral. So I began the slow, surgical process of unraveling his entire world. First, I collected everything. Every shred of digital evidence went into encrypted backups, offline drives, and cloud storage under fake accounts. I photographed his journals, his folders, the flash drives, even the receipts that showed where he'd been when he claimed he was on work trips. I recorded his voice and video in secret. I dug into his financials, tracking suspicious wire transfers and hush payments. I built a timeline that showed how his abuses lined up with Kayla's downward spiral, and how eerily similar it was to his other victims. Second, I went to his employer. Not directly, of course, that would be foolish. Instead, I mailed an anonymous package with just enough evidence to raise alarm bells, but not enough to tie it to me. HR launched a confidential review. A week later, Brandon was placed on leave pending an investigation. He was furious, said it was a jealous co-worker. Said someone was trying to frame him. I played along. I told him he was strong, that we'd get through it, that I believed him. He cried in my lap that night, telling me how much he loved me. I didn't flinch. I recorded the whole thing. Then I reached out to Kayla's ex again, Kyle, and told him the full truth. I showed him the video. He cried harder than I'd ever seen a man cry. Then he asked me what I wanted to do with it. I want justice, I said. Real justice, not just jail. I want everyone to know who he is, what he did. I want to bury the version of him he built. Kyle offered to help. He had connections in video editing, audio restoration, cyber forensics. Together, we cleaned the recordings, sharpened the audio, extracted metadata. I worked with Lena, my lawyer friend, to make sure everything I was doing would hold up if it ever came to court, and that I couldn't be sued for defamation. Then came the moment of truth. I called Erin, the ex-co-worker who had survived him. I asked her if she'd be willing to go public. She hesitated. She said her career could be destroyed, that she was scared, that she had kids. I said, "You're not alone, and this time I have receipts." 2 weeks later, she agreed. I built a website. I hired a journalist. We gathered statements from 3 other women, all anonymous, but corroborated. We created a timeline, a victim map, a dossier so airtight it could choke. Lena helped me write the release, carefully worded, legally sound, emotionally devastating. We embedded the voice recordings, the videos, the photos, with faces blurred, and Kayla's final statement. Then I sent it to everyone, Brandon's family, his boss, the media, the alumni board from his university, the parent association from the private school he tutored at during college. I even sent it to the local police, with a detailed cover letter from Lena. I didn't sleep the night before it went live. I just stared at the ceiling and listened to the sound of Brandon snoring, oblivious. At 6 a.m. I left the house. By noon, the world had turned. I watched it unfold from a hotel room across the city. My phone was blowing up. His name was trending. Headlines like, "Tech executive accused in multi-year abuse scandal," and "Wife of accused predator releases bombshell evidence," were everywhere. Brandon tried calling me 32 times. I didn't answer. Then I blocked him. By 5 p.m., the police had raided our house. I watched it on the Ring camera feed. They took his laptop, the drives, his phone, his external backups, everything. He was escorted. Out in cuffs. I'll never forget the look on his face. He didn't look angry. He looked betrayed, as if I had hurt him. The arrest was for possession of illicit recordings and distribution without consent, a felony in our state. But that was just the start. Once Erin came forward, the floodgates opened. More women, more stories. He was linked to 5 more victims in 3 different cities. Kayla's case was reopened as a suspicious death. Kyle submitted a statement. I did too. The video, the one of her looking broken, saying goodbye, was submitted as evidence. Brandon denied everything, said I was framing him. That I had doctored the files. Then he tried to claim Kayla had seduced him. That was the last straw for me. I held a press conference. I read from Kayla's journal. I played the voicemail she left me a week before she died. I showed the receipts, the dates, the timeline. I did it all with a calm, unwavering voice, even as my hands shook under the podium. Brandon's mother collapsed during the broadcast. His father tried to sue me for defamation. It was dismissed. Then I filed for divorce. I got the house, the car. Most of the accounts. Brandon was cut off by nearly everyone. His friends, his family, his former co-workers. The journalist who broke the story won an award. I got death threats from incel forums and love letters from survivors. The trial is scheduled for next spring, but the fallout didn't stop there. My parents, who had spent 6 years grieving Kayla, blaming themselves, were gutted. My mother refused to eat for days after I showed her the video. My father broke, a chair against the wall. Then he hugged me for the first time in years and said, "You brought her justice, you did what I couldn't." But here's the twist. Even after all that, even after the evidence, the press, the arrests, the confessions, some people still defended him. One of them was my cousin Rachel. She said I had ruined a man's life over a few old videos, that I should have handled it privately, that I'd made Kayla's tragedy all about me. I screamed at her. I told her she was dead to me, but the words stuck. And now, in my quietest moments, I still hear them. So here I am. Months later, my ex-husband awaiting trial, my sister's memory finally being honored, my life a crater of what it used to be. And I still wonder, am I the a-hole for going nuclear? For turning a monster's secrets into a public execution? For dragging my family, my name, and my grief through the spotlight, just to make sure everyone saw what he really was? Or did I just do what had to be done, no matter the cost? Am I the a-hole for destroying my husband's life after I found out who he really was, and what he did to my sister? I, 31F, have been married to Brandon, 34M, for 7 years. We've been together for nearly 10. If you'd asked me a few months ago what our marriage was like, I would have said we were solid, not perfect but safe, steady. The kind of marriage people envy when they've been through too many roller coasters. We didn't fight much. We laughed a lot. We built a life that felt real. We were talking about kids. We were planning to move. I thought I knew who I married, but I didn't. Not even close. Before I tell you what happened, I have to explain the backdrop, because the core of this story doesn't start with my marriage. It starts with my sister. Her name was Kayla. She was 2 years younger than me, smart, brilliant even. The kind of girl who wore eyeliner with tears and still looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. She wrote poetry, played guitar, volunteered at the crisis center, and kept a journal that I only got to read after she died. Because yes, she died 6 years ago. The official story is that it was suicide. That's what we were told. That's what everyone believed. She was 23, living in a studio apartment downtown, trying to balance 2 jobs and a toxic ex. She was struggling. She was overwhelmed. I blamed myself for not noticing the signs. I hated that I'd been too busy planning my wedding to check on her more. My parents fell apart. My mum stopped going to church. My dad started drinking again. It was a slow-motion collapse we never fully recovered from, but I never really believed it. Not deep down, because Kayla had plans, big ones. She had a journal filled with ideas for her future, notes about wanting to study abroad, poems about escape, but also about hope. She had just gotten out of a bad relationship and had texted me, the week before she died. "It's finally over. I feel free for the first time in months." Then, gone. I didn't ask enough questions. I let the grief swallow everything. I let the funeral happen without investigating. I let her ex fade into the background without ever confronting him. His name was Kyle. That's all I knew, until 3 months ago. It started innocently, with a picture. I was cleaning out our hallway closet, trying to sort through old junk to make room for nursery stuff. I found an old phone box, Brandon's old Pixel 2, and inside was a loose SD card. I wasn't even trying to snoop. I popped it into my laptop, thinking it would Have vacation photos or something we could back up. What I found made me stop breathing. There were hundreds of pictures. Some of them were from years ago. I recognized places we'd been, but some weren't. There were photos of women I didn't know, screenshots of conversations, and a folder called KJ. At first, I didn't connect the initials. I just clicked. Inside were dozens of voice recordings, screen captures, and pictures of my sister. Some of them I recognized, selfies she had posted on Instagram years ago. But some were private. One was a picture of her sleeping, another was of her crying in what looked like a bathroom mirror. Then came the recordings. I played one. It was a voicemail, her voice shaking. "Please, just stop, please. I won't tell anyone. I just want to be left alone." Another, "You said you loved me. Why would you say that if it wasn't real? Why would you do this to me?" I played the next one. My blood turned to ice. It was a male voice, clear, familiar. "No one's going to believe you. You're pathetic. You need me more than I ever needed you." It was Brandon. I dropped the laptop. No, 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 no. I thought I was losing my mind. I told myself it couldn't be him, that maybe it was fake or doctored or a sick prank. But the timestamps on the files were from 2016, the same year Kayla died. The timeline matched. The pieces started to fall into place one after another, with a sickening sense of inevitability. I dug deeper. I went to our storage unit. I pulled out old tax returns, travel logs, emails. I found a file on our shared drive, hidden in a nested folder under a fake client name that had spreadsheets tracking conversations with aliases. One of them was KJ. Another was BL, who I later found out was a woman in his department who quit abruptly in 2018. I started contacting people. I made a burner email and posed as someone doing a background check. I reached out to old co-workers. A pattern started emerging. Brandon was not just manipulative, he was calculated. He would love bomb women, isolate them, record them, gaslight them, and discard them once they broke. And no one ever said a word. Not because they didn't want to, but because he picked women who had no power. Interns, students, isolated girls. And apparently once my own sister. I called my best friend Lena, who's a lawyer. I told her everything. She helped me understand what I could and couldn't legally do with the recordings. She also helped me track down someone else, a woman named Erin, who used to work with Brandon. She had a restraining order against someone years ago, but the paperwork was sealed. We met in secret. I told her I wasn't there to expose her. I just wanted the truth, she cried. Then she told me everything. Brandon had manipulated her into a relationship. He pretended to be suicidal when she tried to leave. He threatened to leak photos she didn't know he had taken. She left her job to escape him. She said he always bragged about being able to erase his fingerprints from any situation. That he was a ghost when it came to blame. I asked her if he ever mentioned a girl named Kayla. She froze, then said, "He used to call someone that, but it wasn't her real name. I thought it was a fantasy." He'd get weird when he talked about her. I went home and locked myself in our bathroom. I cried for 3 hours. Then I made a plan. I started documenting everything. I backed up all files, sent copies to trusted friends, created a dead man switch with Lena. I started sleeping in the guest room and told Brandon I had a stomach bug. I told him I needed space. I pretended to be tired, overwhelmed, busy with work. Then I reached out to a journalist friend. I sent her a redacted version of the files. She called me an hour later and said, "This isn't just a story. This is a bomb." I told her to wait. I wasn't done yet. Then I called Kayla's ex, Kyle. I found his number in one of her old journals. I asked if we could talk. He agreed. Kyle was shaken. He told me that Kayla had broken up with him after someone started stalking her. She said it was someone from work, not her job but mine. She told him not to interfere, said she was handling it. She said if anything happened to her, it wasn't suicide. He thought she was being dramatic. I hung up and vomited in the kitchen. Think? Then came the final piece. I found a flash drive in Brandon's toolbox. Inside was a folder called Confessions. It contained videos, 5 of them, all with women sitting in front of a camera, looking broken, tired, scared. Each was recorded with a timestamp. Each had Brandon's voice in the background, prompting them Tell me what you did wrong. Say you understand why this is your fault. Say no one will love you but me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't exist. One of them was Kayla. I recognized the shirt she was wearing. It was mine. She had borrowed it the last time I saw her. Her voice was hoarse. Her eyes were empty. Then she said, "If I disappear, it's because I couldn't." Win, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I passed out. When I came to, everything inside me had changed. I wasn't a sister anymore. I wasn't a wife. I was something else. I'll stop here for now, but I'll continue in part 2, which will cover exactly how I exposed Brandon, what happened to him, the fallout with our families, and the court battle that followed. Am I the a-hole for turning my entire family against my brother after discovering the secret he's been hiding for 10 years? Before I say anything else, I need to admit that this situation destroyed my family. I didn't mean for it to go this far, I really didn't. But after what I found out, I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I, 32F, have an older brother, Eric, 35M, who used to be my hero. Growing up, he was the golden boy. Straight A's, athletic, charming, the one everyone in the neighborhood loved. He always knew what to say, how to win people over, how to make you feel special. I was the quiet one, the artsy girl with anxiety and a habit of observing more than speaking. We were close in the way that siblings can be when they share childhood secrets and whispered nighttime conversations, even if one always seemed to shine a bit brighter. But after high school, Eric changed, or maybe he stopped pretending. It's hard to say now, looking back. He got a scholarship to a prestigious university, partied too much, got kicked out for academic dishonesty, a fact he never told our parents. He said he left to pursue his own path. He bounced from job to job, always with a story for why he was quitting. Toxic boss, unfair workload, company folding. He dated constantly but never seriously. When my parents would ask if he was thinking of settling down, he'd just laugh and say, "Someday." Meanwhile, I went to community college, became a graphic designer, started my own freelance business, and got married to a guy named Ryan, 33M, I met in a photography class. We live in a modest house. We have a cat. We argue about laundry. You know, real life. Boring, steady, real. The unraveling started last summer. My mum's 60th birthday was coming up, and I volunteered to put together a big photo slideshow from all our old family albums and camcorder tapes. I wanted it to be perfect, a timeline of her life, our childhood, the big moments. So I dove into boxes of dusty VHS tapes, DVDs, flash drives, you name it. It was during that process that I found something strange. A flash drive labeled, "Eric, backup." Curious, I plugged it in. It contained what looked like a series of saved photos, videos, PDFs, and some journal-like Word documents. The folders were dated between 2012 and 2015, when Eric was supposedly traveling through Europe and figuring things out. At first, it was what I expected. Selfies, nightlife pictures, some dated blog posts. But then I opened a folder, titled ELAR, and everything changed. Inside were hundreds of messages, screenshots, videos, names. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. Eric had been part of an online lifestyle community, one of those high-control pickup artist-type groups. Except this wasn't just cringy Reddit advice about how to talk to women. This was something darker. They called themselves the emotional leverage revolution. The core belief of ELR was that women are biologically programmed manipulators, and that the only way to maintain power in a relationship is through psychological dominance. They used terms like mirroring, pattern, breaking, and attachment inversion, tactics pulled from real psychological manipulation frameworks. I know this because I Googled them. Eric wasn't just a follower. He was one of the top posters. He uploaded guides. He filmed tutorials where he bragged about training women to beg for scraps. He even shared screenshots of texts from women. He was dating, mocking them, rating them, offering case studies of how he broke them. The tone was gleeful, smug, evil. I felt physically ill. Some videos blurred faces, but others didn't. I recognized two of the women. One had come to a family party once. He told us they broke up because she cheated. That same woman had, in the screenshots, begged him to stop ignoring her. He told her she was training to deserve silence. I stayed up all night reading everything, for hours. I just couldn't stop. I wanted to believe there was a rational explanation. Maybe it was a role-play group, maybe it was satire, but it wasn't. It was real. It was Eric. And it went on for years. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. I debated what to do. This wasn't just a moral dilemma. It was my brother, my family, my parents adored him. He was always the first to show up for birthdays, always brought gifts, always had a smile, but it was fake. I knew now it was all fake. The final straw came when I opened a document called Rules for Maintenance. It was a guide, a literal checklist he wrote for how to maintain a submissive girlfriend. Things like periodically withdraw affection to keep her anxious, give small rewards after emotional punishment, always keep her chasing validation. And then I recognized a name. One of the entries was about a woman named Tessa. That's my best friend, my best friend. She dated Eric for 6 months in 2017. They broke up suddenly, and she never talked about it. When I asked her why back then, she just said it got weird. I called her, shaking. I asked her if she still had any messages from Eric. She said she deleted everything, but when I explained what I found, she broke down crying. She said he used to train her to sit silently during meals and told her that reacting emotionally was a sign of weakness. She said she used to journal her feelings because he convinced her she was too broken to talk. She never told anyone because she thought she had the problem. That was it. I took everything to Ryan. I told him I needed help confronting Eric. We printed out pages. We made backups. I wanted to confront him privately, but Ryan, and honestly, Tessa too, convinced me that silence is complicity, that if Eric could charm his way into our family, he could do it again to someone else. So I did something drastic. At my mum's birthday party, I played the slideshow, the normal one. Everyone clapped. Then I said I had one more thing to share. A video message from Eric's past. I played a muted video, just 5 seconds. It showed Eric's face speaking directly into a camera saying, "Never let her feel safe. Safety breeds independence." That's all. My mum laughed, thinking it was a joke. My dad looked confused. Eric stood up and said, "What the hell is this?" Then I handed out the printed transcripts, dozens of them. I said, "This is who Eric really is. I can't keep pretending anymore." Eric exploded, called me a psycho, said I was framing him, that it was taken out of context. My mom started crying. My dad got up and walked outside without saying a word. The room fell apart. Over the next 48 hours, everything burned down. Eric denied everything. He said it was part of a research project for a book, that it was an experiment in role-play. But the women I reached out to, 5 of them, confirmed it all. They were real. Their pain was real. One had been in therapy for 3 years. My parents were divided. My mum clung to denial. My dad, after reading the messages, told Eric he was not the son he raised. He hasn't spoken to him since. Extended family took sides. Some called me brave. Others said I ambushed him and humiliated my parents. Eric sent me a letter last month saying I ruined his life and that one day I'd understand what it's like to have everyone turn on you. But here's the thing. I don't regret exposing him. I regret not doing it sooner. Still, part of me wonders, did I go too far? I could have confronted him in private. I could have given him a chance to explain. I could have kept it out of the public eye. But I didn't. I nuked him. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's fake pregnancy at her own baby shower and ruining her life? I, 30F, never thought I'd be the villain in my own family's story. But here I am, writing this after being excommunicated from what remains of our family group chat and called every name under the sun. My crime, exposing my sister's lies. But it's never that simple, is it? Let me back up a bit. My sister, Lila, 28F, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're close in age, but polar opposites in personality. I was the bookish, awkward kid who went into nursing. She was the social butterfly, the pretty one, the one who somehow managed to float through life like everything was handed to her. And in many ways, it kind of was. Our parents doted on her. Not maliciously, but it was obvious. I was the stable one, the responsible one. She was the sensitive one who needed more support. I didn't mind, not really. Until I started noticing the pattern, the lies. Lila lies, not just little white lies or exaggerations. I mean, she lies. Big, elaborate, performative lies. In high school, she told everyone she had mono just to get out of exams. In college, she faked being mugged so she could drop out of a class she was failing without repercussions. She once told a boyfriend she had ovarian cancer to stop him from breaking up with her. She had our mom convinced she had chronic fatigue syndrome for 2 years and took a free ride financially the whole time, while partying every weekend. Each time, she cried, begged forgiveness, and said she was struggling. And each time our parents forgave her and asked me to be supportive. So I became the vault, the one who kept the family secrets, patched things up, covered for her when needed, and quietly resented it more and more as the years went. Cut to about a year ago. Lila starts dating this guy Mark, 35mm, a kind, well-off, emotionally intelligent man who owns a small but thriving tech company. He's divorced, has a 5-year-old daughter, and seems very grounded. Naturally, we were all shocked when he fell for Lila. She acted like she'd won the lottery, and maybe she had. Mark was mature, responsible, and totally smitten. 6 months into the relationship, she tells us she's pregnant. I was genuinely happy for her, or tried to be. She was over the moon, and for the first time, I thought maybe this would be the thing that anchored her. That made her grow up, except something felt off. First, she refused to go to her OB/GYN appointments with anyone. She'd always say Mark was busy, or she wanted privacy, or she was too overwhelmed. But then she'd come back with ultrasound pics, which she'd show off with a weird rehearsed energy. I work in nursing. I've seen a million ultrasounds. These didn't look right. They were stock images, I was pretty sure. I asked her casually once, "Oh, where did you get this done?" Just curious because it looked super clear. She got defensive, said I was medical shaming her. Then came the baby bump. It showed up. All of a sudden, big and round, like someone had tied a throw pillow to her belly. It never changed size, and her weight didn't fluctuate anywhere else. She avoided pool days. She said she had pregnancy acne, so she didn't want photos taken. Mark, bless his soul, was completely oblivious. He gushed about the nursery. He bought books on fatherhood. He took time off work to nest with her. He showed up to family dinners glowing like a man reborn. And Lila lapped it up. At one point, I confronted her. Quietly, privately. I said, "Lila, are you actually pregnant?" She went cold. Ice cold. She accused me of trying to ruin the happiest moment of her life because I was jealous she was finally the center of attention. I backed off until the baby shower. Our mum threw it. It was massive. We're talking rented garden venue, catered food, decorations, photographers, personalized baby games. Mark's family flew in. His daughter was there, excited to be a big sister. Lila wore a flowing white maternity gown like she was some kind of fertility goddess, and then I snapped, I don't know what exactly did it. Maybe it was the way she opened gifts for a baby that didn't exist, or the way she gave a speech about how this pregnancy saved her life, or maybe it was the moment I saw her shift weirdly and the bump, the fake bump, moved like a bag of flowers strapped to her, so I did it. I stood up and said loudly, "You're not pregnant, Lila, tell the truth." The whole place froze. She laughed at first, said I was being crazy, but I walked over and pulled her bump up. It shifted. You could see the strap. Gasps. Dead silence. Then someone, I think Mark's sister, said, "Oh my God, is that fake?" Lila started crying hysterically. Mark looked like someone had slapped him. Our mom screamed at me. I just stood there, feeling like I'd walked off a cliff and couldn't stop falling. Lila fainted. Well, pretended to faint. Mark carried her to the car. The shower ended in chaos. A few days later, the truth came out. She had never been pregnant. She said she had psychological trauma and that she convinced herself she could manifest a pregnancy. She claimed she had planned to adopt in secret and surprise everyone once the due date came. Total nonsense. Mark left her immediately. He also found out she'd been taking money from him under the guise of prenatal costs, and funneling it into shopping sprees. He filed charges. She's being investigated for fraud. Our parents are devastated. And me? I'm the villain. My mother said I shamed her in front of the whole community. My aunt said I should have talked to her privately. My cousins think I ruined her life. A few people said I might have pushed her over the edge emotionally. Lila, meanwhile, is now claiming she had a delusional pregnancy due to a dissociative disorder. Her therapist, who I suspect doesn't exist, supposedly told her I re-traumatized her. But was I supposed to let her marry this guy and raise his daughter in a house built on lies? Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for revealing a secret about my father's death that destroyed my family, even though I know they would never forgive me for it? This is a confession I've been holding on to for too long. And honestly, the only reason I'm posting this is because I've run out of people to talk to about it. I don't expect anyone to understand, but I need to get it out before it eats me alive. My family will never speak to me again after this, and I know that. But I don't think I can keep living with the burden of this secret. So here it goes. To give you some context, my dad, Richard, passed away 2 years ago from a heart attack. It was sudden and it hit everyone hard. I loved my dad. I really did. He wasn't perfect, but he was my dad. He worked hard, always, provided for us, and gave the impression that our family was this tight-knit unit, always there for each other. When he died, everyone was devastated. His funeral was packed with family, friends, co-workers, and people from his church. There was no shortage of tears, of people telling me how much he meant to them. But there's something no one knew. Something that no one had any idea about. My dad wasn't the man they all thought he was. He wasn't the perfect, hard-working, loving husband and father. He was, in fact, a monster. I know it's hard to believe, especially considering how much everyone adored him. But I've seen the darker side of my father that no one else did. I never said anything because I thought it was a lost cause. No one would ever believe me. But now with his death, I can't keep it in any longer. Let me start from the beginning. I was the second born of 3 children, but I was always treated like the black sheep. My older sister Emma was the golden child. She was everything my parents wanted her to be, smart, obedient, a perfectionist. Then there was me, always in trouble, always doing something wrong. And then there was our younger brother Noah, who was the baby and was spoiled rotten. But despite all the tension, it seemed like we had a pretty normal family. But when I turned 16, everything changed. I started noticing things about my dad that I couldn't ignore anymore. I'm not sure why it took me so long to realize it. Maybe I was just too naive or trying to convince myself that he was the same man I had always seen. But the truth slowly started coming to light. He would come home late from work, reek of alcohol, and something else I couldn't quite place. At first, I thought it was just a late-night drink at the bar with co-workers, but then I realized it wasn't just alcohol. There were strange marks on his clothes, bruises on his hands, and a coldness in his eyes that wasn't there before. And when I'd ask him where he'd been, he would snap. Not a quick response, but a cold, angry rage that would make me freeze in place. He'd always brush it off and tell me to mind my business, but I knew something was off. One night I overheard him on the phone. He was arguing with someone in a voice I'd never heard before, low, threatening, menacing. He was begging them to keep quiet, and the conversation ended with him saying, "If you tell anyone, I swear I'll make you regret it." I didn't know who he was talking to, but my heart raced. I never confronted him about it. I was scared. And I convinced myself that maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe he was just stressed from work. But then it got worse. When I was 18, I found out what my dad had been doing all along. And this is where everything truly fell apart. I came home from school one day to find my father sitting on the couch, his face pale, his hands shaking. I remember the way he looked at me like he was terrified of me, like he was waiting for something. I asked him what was wrong, and he finally broke down, telling me something I never expected. My dad had been having an affair with one of his co-workers, a woman named Kelly. But it wasn't just an affair. It was a long-term affair, spanning over a decade. They had a child together, a daughter who was my age, who I had never known about. Her name was Lily. She had been living with Kelly and had no idea who my dad was, My dad had been paying her off, sending money to keep her quiet. He was living a double life, pretending to be the perfect husband to my mother while having a completely separate family. The worst part? Kelly wasn't just anyone. She was dangerous. She had some sort of hold over my dad, and it wasn't just emotional. There were things my dad did for her, horrible things that I didn't want to know. But when I asked him to explain, he just broke down further, telling me he was trapped, that Kelly had threatened him with everything: blackmail, violence, the destruction of his reputation. And then it all came crashing down. My dad wasn't just a cheater. He was involved in illegal activities with Kelly. They had used my dad's business connections to cover up what they were doing: money laundering, bribery, and even some shady deals that would have ruined everything if anyone found out. But the real horror came when I found out the truth about my father's death. The night my father died, he was supposed to meet with Kelly. They had a final meeting planned to resolve some financial dispute. But what no one knew was that Kelly had gotten tired of his lies, tired of him threatening her, trying to control her. She had been using him just as much as he had been using her. And that night she made a decision. She confronted him, and it escalated. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know this: my father didn't die of a heart attack. He was murdered. When I found this out, I didn't know how to process it. I could feel the weight of his betrayal crushing me. But then the worst part happened. I went to the police with the information I had. I wanted to tell them everything, expose him for the monster he was, and make sure Kelly would never hurt anyone else. But the police knew. They already knew about Kelly and her involvement. They had been keeping tabs on her for years. They'd been building a case. And then, just like that, it was all gone. Kelly made it look like my dad's death was just an accident. She framed it perfectly. A sudden heart attack that was entirely natural, caused by stress, alcohol, and exhaustion. The authorities never questioned it. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't. So I did something unforgivable. I called my family together, and my mom, my brothers, my grandparents, and I told them everything. I told them that my father was a liar, a cheater, a criminal, and a murderer. I exposed him. I told them that their perfect, loving father and husband was nothing more than a facade. I told them that his death wasn't a heart attack, it was a murder. And I named the woman responsible: Kelly. They didn't believe me at first. They couldn't. They told me I was grieving, that I was confused. But when I showed them the evidence, the papers, the documents, the recordings, everything I had, they had no choice but to accept it. It destroyed my family. My mother hasn't spoken to me since. My brothers accuse me of ruining our father's memory. My grandparents disowned me. No one understands why I did it. They think I'm crazy, that I'm lying, that I just wanted to hurt them, but they don't understand the weight of the secret I've been carrying all these years. They don't understand what it's like to know your father isn't a hero, that he's the villain in his own story. So now I'm left alone with the broken pieces of my family scattered around me. I've lost everything. But I couldn't keep living with the lie. I had to tell the truth, even if it destroyed me in the process, even if it meant losing everything I've ever known. Am I the a-hole for exposing my father's dark secret, knowing it would ruin my family's perception of him? Should I have kept quiet, let them mourn the man they thought he was? Or was I right to destroy their illusion of the perfect family, no matter the cost?